So there's a lot of people out there that have a bad attitude towards aging, and we need to change that. So I think today is going to be the start of this.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of negative stereotypes out there, but if you talk to someone who's actually living it, there are a lot of people who are embracing aging as this wonderful gift. They're reinventing themselves, they're comfortable in their own skin and enjoying the wisdom and the knowledge that they've gained through the years, and it's really beautiful to watch.
I agree, it is beautiful to watch, but we need to change those stereotypes, and I think chipping away at it is going to shift everything into a new positive direction. Today, we're challenging those stereotypes of growing older. So welcome to The Great Take.
Today, we're joined by a guest who's made her mark by rejecting the societal expectations of aging.
Dr. Kerry Burnight is a gerontologist and New York Times bestselling author. She studies the psychology of aging and how people expand joy across their lifespan through what she calls joyspan.
Dr. Burnight, we're so glad that you're here with us today. I'm excited to get into this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Well, would you tell us about yourself and explain the idea behind joyspan? I love that word, by the way.
Yeah, that's a fun word to say. Kind of just say it as much as you want throughout this entire episode.
It turns out you can make words up. So I am a gerontologist, and for the past 35 years, I have had the luckiest job, and that is a front row seat to tens of thousands of adults aging and their families. And when I started out, I worked for 17 years in elder abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation.
Oh, wow.
And it was rough. I mean, what I saw and learned about really just left me in tears for years. On my way home from work, I just sopping up my face with my work clothes. And I would actually have done it forever because there's such a need for it. But I had this realization one day, actually on an airplane, and it was the fact that actually in the research literature, we know the variables that predict whether someone's going to end up alone, taken advantage of. And so all of a sudden I had this image of, like, you think about a skateboard ramp. And there I was down at the bottom of the skateboard ramp. After people had endured all this suffering, I was putting Band-Aids on as fast as I could when we could actually get to the top of this skateboard ramp, equip people with the padding and the right equipment that they needed in order to avoid this profound suffering of old age. And that's when I really went from the very, very dark side into the prevention side. And it's really made all the difference.
Wow.
When you ask about the term, we have used lifespan, how many years you live, for decades. And then about in the 1980s, we added to our vocabulary health span. And health span is how many years you live in good health.
Okay.
So we want a long lifespan. We want a long health span. And often the difference between the two averages between 8 and 12 years of ill health. And yet I would have patients who are in good physical health, good cognitive health. They were living quite a long lifespan, but they were miserable. And that's what got me to the fact that, wow, are we not focused enough on quality of life, well-being? That is the opposite of suffering. And that's when I thought, okay, I want to call it something span, and well-being span is simply not very catchy. And the American Psychological Association defines joy as well-being and life satisfaction. And that's when I thought, let me try joyspan. And it's not toxic positivity, happy all the time.
Yeah.
Happy and joy are actually different construct. So happy is often externally dependent upon
Mhm.
your circumstances. And there is nothing wrong with happiness, but it often comes and goes. Joy is an inside out job,
Mhm.
and joy is fitting for aging because it can accompany grief
Yeah.
and mobility changes and loss of a beloved partner. So, joy actually ended up being just the right word. And joy span is well being in longevity.
I love that.
I think it should be a TV channel, like C-SPAN, but it should be a TV channel. Joyspan. Today on Joyspan.
That would
I'm
be
on
great.
it.
It would be
That would
fantastic.
be
I mean,
great.
how could you be like, I'm sad right now, turn on Joyspan, you know? You could be the star.
I
You
think
know?
I might have my next career move.
That's
I
Thank
think you
you.
should do that. I definitely think you should do that. I feel like this is gonna be a lot of fun today. You know, this is something Susie and I have been talking about. We can all relate
Yeah.
to this one. So, but when people hear the word aging, it seems to be connected with the word decline. Why do we have these narratives so ingrained in our culture? It just seems to be nurtured when we're young, you know, or conditioned more than anything. That's like we hit a certain age, and then like expect everything to start ticking down. Why do
Yeah,
we do that? But I feel like before, I'm sorry, I know I asked a question and now I'm like, no, I'm just going to keep talking here. But I feel like a lot of that happens here in this country more than other countries. So please.
well, you are right. So if you think about when we're little and, you know, we're read, if we're lucky enough to be read a story, you know, the villain is always the ugly, old, horrible witch who's going to take her talons and she's going to eat you. She has a wart on her nose, right? So we start them out young. And then the reason it gets so ingrained in every one of us is because it's so lucrative.
Mhm.
So
Mm,
there is a multi-billion-dollar anti-aging industry that profits from our fear. And so it's
Preach.
yeah, so we're easy targets because we each have witnessed our grandparents or
Mhm.
parents or great grandparents who have lived lives that we think, oh gosh, you know, I don't want to end up
Right.
like that. So that's a part of it. The realities of, you know, of things. But what we have to remember is that it's a different era. It's a new longevity when people are living longer than ever, healthier than ever, and this industry that tells you if you don't stay young, you have somehow failed.
Right.
And gray hairs
yep.
to be covered. And if you have lines on your neck, it's somehow a reflection of that you didn't do something right. And it's not going anywhere because anything that profitable is here to stay. But I'm so delighted to get to point you to the research that so many things get better as you get older. It's just that they're not lucrative to publicize, and so nobody talks about them. But
Mhm.
today on Great Take, how great that we can talk about what
Yeah.
gets better as you get older.
All
Yeah.
right.
I do feel like I'm also in my 50s, and I do feel like there's a lot more positive conversation and empowering conversation for our generation than there were the generations before us.
You're exactly right. And so there was a time not very long ago where the most prevalent narrative was that women couldn't really handle working outside the home, couldn't be in leadership roles. And now in just, you know, about 100 years, we've really
Mhm.
shown that that is simply not the case. And that same thing is happening with this movement of changing from the decline aging mindset, which has a good acronym of DAM, to a mindset that in addition to areas of loss, there are also areas of growth. And looking at the literature in terms of what gets better as you get older, first of all, we all know this one, you don't care as much what other people think
That's
about you.
right.
I look forward to more of that as I get
Mhm.
older. And
Hmm.
as I said, that 80, 90, 100-year-olds I worked with do have a liberation to be true to themselves, to say, there is not anyone who is for everyone. So we
Right.
might as well just be ourselves. So that's a great one. And then the second one, I feel like everybody needs to know this. Okay, problem solving often gets better as you get older as a result of the neurological integration of the left and right hemisphere of our brains, coupled with the fact that we have solved so many problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if I could, I want to illustrate this one with a
Yeah, please
story.
do.
Yes.
So I had sadly, because he passed away, a brilliant colleague at Harvard who is a gerontologist and geriatrician named Gene Cohn. He was also a fabulous son. Every Wednesday, he would pick his 90-year-old parents up from the train platform because they would take the train. He would pick them up there, take them to his house for dinner. So one Wednesday, he's late, held after at the university. His parents get up on the train platform. It's absolutely dumping snow. And it was before this ubiquitous cell phone era. So they didn't have a way to reach their dumb Harvard son. So they look over and they see a pizza place. And they carefully take their walkers over to the pizza place. And they say, we'd like to have a pizza delivered to our son's house. And when you're delivering it, we'd like to ride along in the car with that pizza.
That is genius. I thought they were just going to go sit and have a pizza.
I didn't know you were leading there. That's amazing.
That's the problem solving
Yeah.
of older. And if people recognized that once we can move away from the brainwashing that aging is all decline, we can lean into that and we can start to say, wait, let's be quiet for a minute and listen to the 80, 90, 100-year-olds. Because when we give people the time, that's where the solutions are. And I believe the solutions that society needs reside within that wisdom of older adults. But we've got to put our phones away for a minute. We got to slow down and we got to listen to the depth of those who go before us. So far we have what gets better is 1, we don't care as much what people think about us. 2, we have improved problem solving skills. 3, we appreciate connection more because we recognize how valuable it is. And we know who our people are versus who our people are not.
Yes.
And that's a big eye opener that I get to see with people who are ahead of me, of recognizing how sweet human connection is and how much it means. And another thing that gets better is humility. And I think our society would do so much better if we were to embrace humility and other-centeredness as opposed to such self-centeredness.
Ooh, yep.
10,000 of us every single day are turning 75. So that gives me great hope that the humility and the problem solving and the connection that we need could be there if only we're to get over this old way of thinking that aging is bad.
Well, that's amazing. I mean, just there's so much wisdom and depth in everything you just talked about. I kind of just want to sit here and just listen. Can we just have the show with you just talking and we may ask you a question?
I love your questions, so bring it.
When did you start questioning the traditional expectations of how older adults are supposed to behave? So I would think that would be kind of, you kind of picked up on those cues, correct? Of just...
Yes. I have to say that had I not had the privilege of being with so many older adults, I too would have just lived in my misconception that somehow younger is better and that younger people know better. Because I too was brainwashed in not just ageism, but
Right.
we take it in so much, all of us, that it's internalized ageism. So it's IA as opposed to, we're all talking about AI, but this IA of really listening and thinking, oh my goodness, what we're saying to ourselves about growing older is not only overly negative, but it actually is physically damaging to us. There is a study out of Yale University showing that people who embrace all decline beliefs about aging live on average 7.5 years shorter and in poorer physical and cognitive health than those who have made this leap, this countercultural understanding that many things get better as you get older. You know, a lot of the things that we blame on age because it's easy and
Mhm.
because sometimes we get a laugh out of it but it's not neutral. And saying that all of this stuff that you, oh, I look so old, that ship has sailed, I can't do that.
Ooh, I'd do that.
Who would want to hear from me because I'm older? It is truly physically dangerous.
Hmm. That's so
Wow.
interesting. We talk a lot about caregiving on this podcast. And so I'm so curious how you think these norms affect the way families might approach caregiving and how they support their aging parents.
Yes, I want to give such a shout out and a salute to caregivers because it is a challenging, all encompassing, honorable, and often invisible service that you're doing. And so that's the first message. And I'm a caregiver too. So the second message is that this societal craziness about old as bad is adversely impacting the older adults in our lives as well as ourselves because every single one of us is aging.
Mm-hmm.
So if I give you an example, when we think, ugh, old is just, oh yeah, the other day I went somewhere and I said that I was a gerontologist, and the person, right without any inkling, said, oh, aging sucks. And I just thought, you know, it's as ridiculous now as saying like, "Hi, I'm a woman," and then someone saying, "Oh, being a woman sucks," right? That's ridiculous. You wouldn't say that. It isn't accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
so aging, there are hard things to it, but the whole thing doesn't suck. And so as caregivers, I would beg you to really examine what you think about the older person in your life and also what you think about your own aging because by making that shift you can also often improve the relationship that you have in your caregiving relationship
Mm-hmm.
and also your future self as someone who will require care because all of us don't get out of this life alive. So
Right.
we know if you start at the end, I
Yeah.
guarantee you, you will die.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you one thing. I really do wish you had a joyspan channel because when I was caregiving, everything you're saying right now is exactly what I needed, especially when it comes to aging. When I was thinking about my future, where I just moving forward, I was terrified of it, and at times I still am, you know. And so, but you're reinforcing that things can get better
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to things are going to get worse
Yeah.
because now I'm old. I'm 51, and I was caregiving from my right before I turned 31 to right before I turned 42. So by myself all those years. And then I
Wow.
got really, really sick from all the stress and everything else. And so moving forward, I was just like, there's no hope. For the longest time, I was like, nah, I have nothing to look forward to because guess what? I'm getting older.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, this is going to suck. But that all started to shift with a lot of work, you know, and everything like that. So, you know, just therapy and everything else. But today, I went climbing this morning I went climbing at the climbing gym. And at 51, I'm doing stuff that I was doing in my 20s.
That's awesome.
So I was just like, all right, been putting that hard work in there. So,
I
you know,
love
it
to
pays
hear
off, you know, it pays off when
Mm-hmm.
you switch the mindset.
No, I love what you've said because it's really important because I've watched thousands of people go from feeling no hope and feeling like, what's the point of all this? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
just all bad news and hard and family strife, and watch them with a series of intentional practices over time get to a different place and get
Mhm.
to what you're describing. And it is so hopeful, and into every life. Like, that's what I was saying before, is that we do know that we're all going to pass away, and that's part of being a human, just in the same way that we were born. And before we get to that passing stage, rough things do happen, right? So sometimes people will say to me, well, it'll be okay as long as nothing bad happens. And then I always take their hands and say, that's not something that I'm going to ever promise,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the humans, as we grow older, there will be, even with all the exercise and all the things, there will be mobility changes and vision changes and hearing changes. There will be a diagnosis that we weren't expecting. There will be either our partners or ourselves will pass away. And then, having said all that, you can either experience those very real challenges shrouded with suffering and then suffer the remaining time until you die. Or you can take that really hard stuff and say, yes, everybody has stuff. I'm going to feel the
Mhm.
grief.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to share it with others. I'm going to get counseling if I need to, because that can be really helpful. But there's a whole big, huge, robust coping literature that gives us tools internally and externally on how to cope with what life brings.
So how do you make that shift? I mean,
So,
what are the practices? You also mentioned like the internal components. You've mentioned that twice, I think. There's these internal components, and I wonder, does that have something to do with it, or you know?
yes.
Yeah, help
So
us shift, Dr.
you got
Burnight.
it. Okay. We're so accustomed to talking about our bodies. And yes, bodies, but the reason I'm not talking about that is because we already know, yes, you know, do all the things of cardiovascular and strength training and flexibility and equilibrium training. Absolutely. But I do think that you hear a lot about that.
Mhm.
What you don't hear a lot about, and the research that I want to share with your listeners, is that there are things that aren't actually just things for your body that are as powerful. And the research shows that those things group into 4 areas. And those 4 areas are all verbs because they all take action. And I wish that they went into an acronym that would be
Mhm.
really catchy and
Oh, this
lovely.
is
And
the framework in your book, right?
yes, yes,
I was reading about this, and this is so good. Yes,
yes.
continue.
So, from tens of thousands of studies, we found that there are 4 things that people who are able to thrive in longevity do. And it's not things you're born with.
Mhm.
It's not, it's like saying, oh, you're lucky if you have good cardiovascular. It's like, no, I have worked on it. So,
Yeah,
these are all things you can work on.
choices
And
that you make.
choices, and tens of thousands of choices that you make every day. So I want to tell people the 4 areas are: it starts with a G and it ends with a G. But the first G is for grow. And people who thrive in longevity, people who are able to maintain their joy spans, are people who have decided to put the work in to continue with self development,
Mhm.
even up until their last day. So I have a patient right now who is living in a skilled nursing facility. She's physically has a lot going on. She's quite frail and has a lot of physical challenges, but she proactively decided that what she wanted to continue to grow on, how she wanted to be remembered as somebody who is a wonderful listener. She listened to TED Talks on listening, and she actually got a book on listening, and
Wow.
she decided, this is my thing. My whole life I've not really been a listener. What if that was my So she made that decision and worked on it, and now every time I go to visit her, there is a group of people who work there who are gathered around her bed sharing their
That's
problems
amazing.
because she decided to continue to grow. And
Yeah.
she picked something that I hadn't even thought of until I listened to somebody who came before me, and that
Mhm.
was her area. But it may be that you wanted to grow in creating a garden, or maybe you wanted to do a pivot and in your 90s, like one of my patients now wanted to get, because he had never worked in a restaurant and he decided that is something he would like to do. So there are growth opportunities, and
Mhm.
humans need to continue to grow, but somehow we have lost that trail
Yeah.
and we limit it to younger years of all of this about growing and growing when you're young. But when you're older, there are so many opportunities. Okay,
Mhm.
so that's the first one,
That's so
grow.
good.
And now, if we get to the second letter, if you think about my crazy acronym, it's C, and that is for connect.
Mm.
People with long joy spans are people who go out of their way to connect with other humans. Loneliness, as defined as wanting more social interaction than you currently have, is the equivalent of smoking 14 and a half cigarettes a day.
Wow.
So loneliness really hurts us. And
Oh,
yet, if we just put it on autopilot, we're going to be lonely. And if we're
Yeah.
honest, we're already lonely sometimes
Mhm.
at every age. And so when you know that loneliness is like this super drug like Ozempic, you would do whatever it takes. And what it takes is to be that friend, the one who picks up the phone, the one who remembers birthdays, the one who says, "Gosh, you're going to chemotherapy. May I drive you to chemotherapy?"
Mhm.
The one who says, "Oh gosh, sounds like you're sick. Can I make some soup and bring it over?" Friend, the only way to have friends for these 100-year lives is to be that one who puts themselves out
To be
there.
the proactive
yeah.
friend.
Yeah.
Yes.
Mhm.
So my patients who come in lonely, they say, "I don't have anything to look forward to. Nobody invites me.
Yeah.
I'm not going anywhere for the holidays." I first listen and I'm sympathetic. And then after about 5 minutes of that, I say, "Now tell me, what are the plans that you have made? How have
Mhm.
you reached out?" And you can be confined to a wheelchair and still be able to use the phone, or you can have hearing problems and still find other ways. Like
Right.
anything that we can think of that's keeping us from being proactive in our friendships, I would be able to point to an example of somebody who has prioritized friendship anyway.
I remember after my mom passed in 2017, as a caregiver, you become very isolated. And so I remember this one friend of mine in particular, I hadn't seen her in a while, and we got together on a coffee, and she goes, "Thank you for inviting me to have coffee." It's like I haven't done this in a long time with somebody, just to like hear from an old friend and just have that connection. And so when she said that, I was like, I'm doing that with everybody. And because I was alone for so long, and just having that human connection again just makes all
Yeah.
the difference in the world. It's
I
just
so
massive. Yeah.
agree. And if I could go back to talk to you in your heroic era where you were by yourself in the throes of caregiving, I would say to 30 and 40-year-old you, even though it feels like there's absolutely no time to make social connections or to keep our friendships up, it is a lifeline.
Hmm.
So sometimes, maybe when our loved one is asleep, or sometime just to be able to call and say, "I am having a hard time right now.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
wanted to let you know about this." And because other people are lonely too, and you're not burdening them, but it is kind of a muscle. And the more we put ourselves out there, the more reconnected we can become as a society.
Mhm. That's so good.
I agree. Yeah.
So we're on
So
A.
yes, we've
We're
done
on A. Yeah.
we've done G, we've
Yeah.
done C, and now we're on A. And the A is, the research shows us that people with longer joy spans, longer well being, are people who are willing and able to adapt
Mm.
to the change.
Hmm.
And I am not saying that that is easy. I am saying that, let's say mountain biking is your great passion and that's what you love. And as you get older, you can no longer do that. The fork in the road is that either you go, oh, I'm so frustrated. I can't do this. I was so great at it. I had so much fun. All my buddies were mountain bike riders. Or you go, okay, I can't do this. I'm going to feel it. I'm going to grieve it. And I'm going to find something else. I'm going to put the work in to adapt to that thing that I didn't ask for. I didn't ask for a cancer diagnosis. I didn't ask for my husband to live with Alzheimer's disease. And yet, as humans, these things come our way, and the willingness and the ability to adapt to those things.
I think about all the people who take up pickleball now.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never played it. I've been wanting to do it.
It's all the rage.
Have you done it?
I have. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really fun. But
Yeah.
it's like I know several people who have not been active for quite some time, and then they've taken up pickleball, and it's just been this amazing thing for them. So
Yes.
it's really great.
So that's the adapting, and that brings us to the final G, and that verb is give. And people who thrive in longevity are people who continue to find ways to give. And when you don't see yourself as having anything to give of yourself, we're in for a problem.
Right.
And so that's why when we patronize, like, oh, make it paternalistic that older adults are cute and less than, and that that is dangerous, because that's conveying the message that you don't have anything to give, but humans need to give. And that literature is the purpose literature. So my colleague Steve Cole at UCLA, he did a study and he held all the variables constant that you would think, which was diet, exercise, sleep, some genetic predisposition, socioeconomic status. And he also put in the question, to what extent do you feel like your life has purpose? And people who felt like they had something that was of meaning, that mattered, lived longer, healthier, had lower inflammation and better antiviral load than those who didn't. And
Wow.
that's how important it is. And somebody thinks, well, I don't know. What do I have to give? I'm not talking money. It could be something as simple as, I got a lemon on my lemon tree. I'm going to pull that lemon. I'm going to go next door to that neighbor I don't know and say, I had this extra lemon. I wonder if you'd like it. And then they all are kind of related, because then that causes social connection. And then what made me think of it is the woman who told me this story. She was 87 at the time. She brought the lemon over, and the woman who answered the door had two little children on her hip. And it was right around dinner time. And so my client said, I remember when I was a young mother, how busy dinner time was. If it would ever be helpful, I would happily entertain those kids while you're cooking. And the woman just about hugged her, toppled her over and said, come on in. And they got so that it was such a win-win.
That's awesome.
Had that woman not thought about that little ridiculous lemon moment, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah. So I have a question, because I feel like I hear a lot. Well, let me ask it this way. What would you say to the person who's aging and feels like they're not being invited, they're not being valued, or even in like conversations, they don't experience people as thinking they have anything to say, and the experience of being on the receiving end of ageism, I guess. What would you say to those listeners who are really struggling with finding their place in the world right now, based on the external feedback that they're getting?
I love that question, because if you are older, you have that experience. That experience when people look
Yeah.
beyond you, or if you're taking a little bit of time paying, you feel that people are acting like they're frustrated with you, or they assume that you can't do things, or they
Mhm.
talk over you, or they call you sweetie or honey, or they say, you still are doing this, and you think, oh, for heaven's sake, yes, I'm still doing this. So love your example, because it's very real. We are living in a world
Mhm.
that ageism is all around us.
Yeah.
Step one is what I'm proposing is, in all of this ageism, stop letting it come from you as well. So that it's
Yeah.
not going to come like this change, this revolution isn't going to come from 20-year-olds going, aha, I realize it. Oh, it has to come from us. And by us, I mean the older people. So people, who are 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, really putting your shoulders back and saying, they're not seeing me. They are acting like I'm somehow a child.
Mhm.
I know that as long as I'm breathing on this planet, I might as well be trying to maximize my well being. And maximize my well being meaning to contribute and connect and adapt and give, and to like do it anyway. So to go back to that analogy that we had with women, there
Mhm.
was a time when they would say, oh, women can't be at this table. This is for the leaders. But some women put their shoulders back and said, watch me.
Yeah.
And that's what we, as older, I'm talking about my 80 and 90-year-old self.
Mhm.
That's what it's incumbent upon me to say, like, watch me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna do it anyway. I'm gonna contribute anyway. I'm going to laugh. I'm going to tell a joke. I'm going to give. I'm going to do a meal. I'm going to listen to music. I'm going to write out a prayer and give it to somebody. Like, do it anyway, because you
Mhm.
are surrounded by
Mhm.
ages.
Yeah, when I think about the people in my life that I look to that are quote unquote aging well, that are living a full life, and I've noticed that throughout the years they've been all those things that you say in your matrix. They've been lifelong learners, they've been humble and open to learning new things. They've been generous with their time and their resources. They've been proactive about connecting, believing that they have something to offer, and they've been willing to change with the times. Like I have one friend who, she's at the Apple Genius Bar all the time because she's trying to figure out technology, and she's refusing to accept the fact that just because she's older that she can't work a computer or her phone. So she gets frustrated with herself, but she goes and she learns, and I think she is someone who I think of as someone who's got really a great joy span. I mean, she's living with all the joy that she can have, and that's what I would call aging goals,
Hmm. Yeah.
And it's not too late. Like, if you're older and you've been in a slump, I don't blame you. Or if you're a caregiver and you have been feeling crummy and what's the point of all this? Again, no blame whatsoever, but it's not at all too late to start with the tiny, tiny choices that in these four categories. And so when we think about the physical part, like when you pick up a weight and you lift it and do one curl, and
Mm-hmm.
then you look at your muscle, nothing has happened. And then you would think that didn't work, but you keep doing that and you're going to get strong. And that is the same thing with these internal practices, these joy practices, the commitment that I want my legacy, my joy span legacy, is I want to show people that come behind me that aging can be different and that
Yeah.
people can change and that there can be joy amid grief.
Moving forward, like how do you break the mold of aging? Like, how does the next generation, how can you get through to them that, hey, getting old is going to be okay? Like, don't look at it as so like frightening, like,
I think we have to show it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I
yeah,
think
okay. Yeah.
it starts with us. So when I wrote the book Joy Span, people in the beginning were saying, are you writing this for people with older parents? And it's like, it's actually step one is the recognition that we are all aging, and that each of us is responsible for our aging that is going to change this narrative. Because the tragedy of old age hasn't been that we get old or even that we die. It's that we've made the process unnecessarily and at times excruciatingly painful and humiliating. And that is not a legacy we want to live to
Yeah.
lead to future generations. We want to change it, but change starts with us. So I think that, like, let's say you have a parent who is really suffering and is miserable with being old and just doesn't want to. Step one is putting on your own air mask, like on the airplane, and think, my first step is to attend to my age beliefs and to think, I am going to age in a way that will make my future self proud, a way that at my funeral, people will say, wow, that old lady Kerry was doing all these things and took the time to still listen and learn and help me and be present.
Well, I'm noticing just as you're talking, I'm noticing in my own mind all of the terrible things I say to myself about aging. I mean, I just had a birthday and, all of the things. And so, and there's been like a little feeling of lament of like, oh, I miss being young. But then
Yeah.
also like, I kind of love not caring about as much. And I kind of love knowing who my people are. And I
Yeah.
kind of love the fact that I know stuff that I didn't know then,
Yeah.
And so it's easy for someone like me to think back to all the things I wish I could have done better because I know the things I know now that I didn't know then. Well, that's hogwash, right? So, can we go like real micro? Somebody who's listening to this, like me, who's just like all of a sudden aware of all the negative messaging that I've embraced and that I'm also telling myself. What would be some like, here's how you begin, because beginning is hard, and then
Yeah.
you think you're older, so beginning is hard. But how would you tell somebody to begin the shift?
Yes, I have it. So in the book, I have a lot of joy practices, and so people can go through it. But if you just need one that's going to start you tomorrow,
Yeah.
when we open our eyes in the morning, humans have tended to go, oh, I need a new air conditioner, and my daughter's getting a divorce, and my right knee kind of hurts, and oh my gosh, the dog has something wrong and is limping. And you kind of list out the things. But the way that our brain works, the nucleus accumbens, is what you call
The
out to
nucleus
your,
of what?
yeah, it's a part of the nucleus accumbens.
Okay.
Is that what you call out, what you draw attention to is what you continue to see. So the example, if you were to purchase a Toyota Corolla, then you would look around
They're
and you would
everywhere.
Yeah.
see them everywhere. Or if you get engaged, you start to notice everybody's engagement ring or whatever. So what you call to your attention is what you see. So in the morning, tomorrow, my listeners, before you even get out of bed, you go, I am going to list on my fingers 10 things that are right. I am going to, so I have a patient now who is doing this joy practice, and she has a lot of chronic pain. And so she now finds things on her body that don't hurt. And she goes, my cheeks don't hurt. My left ankle doesn't hurt. And then she goes, and my adult children, this one here is healthy. And I get to have a cup of coffee. And this silly dog of mine is giving me a kiss. And I'm going to listen to this song, to like call intentionally that which is right. And there is always a choice. And I was so inspired by the work of Viktor Frankl,
Oh, I
who
love Viktor
was in a
Frankl.
concentration camp. So the worst possible setting we could ever imagine of human suffering. And what he said is, regardless of circumstance, we can always maintain spiritual freedom. So, regardless of the diagnosis that we're carrying or the grief that we're carrying, we can find and choose to pay attention to those 10 things each morning that are right. And if you can add some of those things of, you know, I'm okay now that I have lines on my neck, just to lean into it, because people want to be around people who are comfortable with
Yeah.
themselves. And part of that is being comfortable with your older self. So that's the challenge. Tomorrow morning, 10 things before your feet even hit the ground.
That's so good.
10 things that are right.
Yes.
10 things that are, I may have to start with 5 and work my way up.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that if anybody's listening to this and not watching it on YouTube, you should at least grab a clip of it, because you, Dr. Burnight, you embody everything that you talk about. I mean, you can just tell that you really embody everything that you talk about. The joy that you have is like, it's palpable.
It's
I've just
beaming.
so enjoyed this conversation with you.
That's so nice. Well, I've enjoyed and so important the work that Gray Take is doing, because you are honoring caregivers, you're honoring older adults, you're changing the dialogue around what it means to grow older. So
Yeah.
it's a really big deal, what you are doing. And I'm
Thank
so
you.
grateful that you would take time with me.
I do have one last question though, because I was going to ask you, like, what feeds your joy right now? What feeds your hope? And I know that it's the older adults that you work with. You've mentioned that. But is there something like a promising shift in attitude towards aging, or something that you're seeing that's not only encouraging you in your work, but that's also feeding your joy?
Yes. So back 37 years ago, when I started into gerontology, I would never think that this topic would be gaining so much attention. And so, like, a book about joy and longevity getting on the New York Times bestseller list, that amazes me. And then every day I get messages of people saying, I was traveling on one path that felt awful, and now I feel different as a
Yeah.
result of using the research of so many people. Like, that really, it lights me up, because it feels like we all individually are playing a role in reducing the suffering that I spent the first 20 years of my career wallowing in. And it feels shocking to me that we can actually change this experience
Yeah.
of old. And that feels crazy good.
Yeah, it really does. It's so great. Thank you so much. I feel really encouraged.
I kind of don't want this to end. Can we just keep going? Could you come here and hang out with us?
Well, here's to old.
Dr. Burnight, could you help our listeners find you beyond this podcast? I know your book is a New York Times bestseller, Joyspan. You can buy that wherever books are sold. But where else can people connect with you and your work?
One fun way is on Instagram. My account is called the_gerontologist, which is
Nice.
GERON. And there we highlight people who are enjoying long joy spans and asking about how they do it, because we can learn the most from people who are actually doing it in their 90s and 100s. And also on my website, we're putting information on there, and that's just my name, drkerryburnight.com.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So one of the things that really stood out to me in this conversation, it was noticing how much negative self-talk I give myself, and the things that I believe about aging and how I'm contributing to that negativity myself. And so I'm really actually excited about practicing some of these shifts that she mentioned.
I agree. And I'm conditioned with my own, with all my negative talk in my head about growing older and all that. And I think the big thing that stuck out to me was the practice, the steps, those 10 steps that they're so small, they can make these little shifts.
The ones when you wake up in the morning,
yes,
like
the one
first
you wake
thing
up
you
in the
think
morning,
about.
that's like the best thing.
Yeah.
And it's really simple, and it doesn't take long. It can take like 20 seconds. You just go pop, 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 pop. And you can start small and grow large, with that as well. So this has just been a fantastic episode. I've really enjoyed it. She was great.
Yeah. And so listeners, if you loved this episode as much as we did, we would love to hear from you. What stereotypes about aging have you seen or experienced? Text us your story or your questions at 833-473-9898.
And if this episode helped, subscribe and leave a review.
We'll see you on the next episode of The Gray Take.
The views and opinions shared in this episode are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Brookdale Senior Living. This content is for informational purposes only and isn't intended as financial or medical advice or an endorsement of any position or product discussed. Always talk to a qualified professional before making decisions about your health, finances, or the care or finances of a loved one based on something you've heard in this program. Brookdale is not responsible for the accuracy or completeness of the information shared.